doing that with these individuals, and we have people in this state who the center has interacted with and others who are going to be impacted.
So what's she gonna do now?
I mean, well, she made her statement. So
I saw the statement.
So
Saw the Facebook post.
yeah. So it's a matter of whether both Republicans and Democrats can come together if they're going to provide this 6-month window. Is what if they can pass legislation that gets them beyond that. But it cannot be a partisan thing. It's going to have to take members working together.
And their credibility is gone if they can't fix this one. You know, I mean, Congress's credibility. It's only group that has a lower credibility than our president.
Yeah.
You know.
And this is what
and they can fix that.
The Republican leadership has asked for, saying, you know, they're telling the president, give it to us. You know, don't make this arbitrary decision. Give it to us. So we'll have to see how that goes. But you know, they're saying, you know, and the senator has experienced this in her own personal circumstance, where people move beyond Republicans and Democrats and care for her as a human being. And what is happening now in Houston is, you know, even people who were affected by Hurricane Sandy, right, in New Jersey, New York, and we've talked about this as well too, is I've read certain members saying, we're not going to hold it against the people of Texas or the people of Houston about disaster relief. Is we need to come together. And so...
A dreamer was one of the fatalities in Houston.
Okay.
And he was out rescuing. He wasn't stuck in his own home. He was out rescuing people.
Well, I think they say Houston and LA have a very high concentration of the dreamers. So
well, we know you know this, but it just bears repeating that this is a national issue, but it's also a local issue. It's a personal issue. As I know you know, there's a dreamer among the congressional staff right here in this building.
Yeah.
And you know, Hawaii stands with each other, and we can't kick him to the curb, and we can't kick all the other dreamers in the state just like him. He is so brave in having gotten out and talked about his story. If you've seen him, he's cried in front of public gatherings as he's told his story. This is personal, and we have to take care of these people. So.
But I would step even beyond that. The dreamers have been bold and enlightened us, but also they have been made very clear that they're not going to turn in their parents as part of the deal. So it puts the responsibility on us. Just simply saying, oh, 800,000 dreamers, you're home free because we can work on this deal. They're not willing to accept, and I think it would be unconscionable for us to ask, well, that's fine, just turn in your parents and your older brothers and whatnot. So it is a moral responsibility as well as a political responsibility.
Yeah, there are a lot of really dirty compromises.
Yeah, so the numbers that we hear, and again, and the harder number is the figure that the Senator gives, is there are 600 DACA applicants in the state of Hawaii, but above that there may be around 2,000 DACA eligible individuals in the state, but it doesn't get to the issue that you said, is that undocumented beyond that. So I mean, this would address a subset, but it goes to what you were saying, the larger issue, and that has been what I think the senator finds disappointing, is that Congress cannot grapple with these larger issues. You know, when she was first elected, they did comprehensive immigration reform. The Senate passed it, and it wasn't something even the senator was completely on board with, but it was something that Republicans and Democrats, the Gang of Eight, so supposedly, right, came up with. But it was the other body that just stopped it. So whether they can come, I mean, they're going to have to come together regarding debt limit, government funding, you know, things like that. So we'll just have to see.
Again, you brought up the debt limit. The Republicans are responsible for running this country, and they have said they wanted a clean debt bill. I would support that. However, if they start adding things to it, including aid to Texas, which I certainly support, I think the price of Democratic support is DACA. And, you know, so it's time to play tough politics and say, if you want any Democratic votes, which they may well need in the House and the Senate, if you add one part to the bill, we get to add our part, and that's DACA. And I would look for all of our Democratic senators and representatives to be pretty clear on that.
Do you know how she feels about that?
You know, I have not talked to her about whether she would just support just a straight emergency funding for disaster relief, or whether you need to look. I mean, but there's other things, whether it's. Oh, I'm sorry, debt limit. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But there, and that was part of the Sunday talk shows this week. I mean, a lot of Republicans were queuing up. We're tying the two together: the debt ceiling and disaster relief.
Well, the White House, he said that.
And so now, I think he was really on to something. It looks like the all-American thing to do, to tie Houston's relief to that, but it's also the all-American thing to do to take care of these young people and their families.
And then what we're hearing too is that Congress is, unlike in other disaster situations, they pass one kind of bill that funds it. They don't think one bill is going to fund it in its entirety. They're going to have to come back because there is longer sustaining issues that separate federal agencies are going to have to help cover the costs for individuals and families. So,
along those lines, we were just upstairs talking with Dale in Senator Schatz's office, and she was. I mean, what's happened in Houston is horrible, and what's about to happen in the Caribbean and probably Florida and perhaps up the East Coast is horrible. It's all preventable. I mean, and we talked about how apparently it's okay to talk about severe weather in the confines of congressional discussions, but we don't talk about climate change. We don't like to connect those two, which whatever. But she suggested that there are some discussions in play to perhaps start convening members to talk about those larger issues as it relates to severe weather, not climate change issues, God forbid we call them that, severe weather issues around the country, and what we can do to impact that and start to stem that tide. So she wouldn't share a lot of details, but that seems to me something Senator Hirono would want to be part of as well.
Okay.
And I think it's in its infancy. Apparently their staff just met today on it. So.
Okay.
And then the other thing tied to all of this is, what we're watching. I don't think anybody in Hawaii watches Houston and now what Irma's doing and doesn't wonder when it's going to be us. Not if it's going to be us, but when it's going to be us. What this administration is doing with the funding for all of those entities that are first on the ground, Coast Guard, FEMA, flood insurance. It's, for a guy that says he's all about making America great again, it doesn't seem to be about those of us that are in disasters in that moment. So I just would pass on to her that we're focused on that. It's frightening, it's inhumane, it's immoral. We can all make fun of him for telling everybody to have a great time, and maybe that's how he views it when he tours a disaster area, but those who've been in disaster areas know there's no great time to be had. And if they can't get FEMA funding, if they don't have Coast Guard resources, if they don't have flood insurance, it's a long road back for those people. They're not having a good time.
Yeah. And I think if individuals are coming to that realization, not everyone has flood insurance. You have to pay to have flood insurance. I mean, even though the system cannot cover all the costs, but if you don't have flood insurance, and FEMA is just a short-term relief. I mean, from our experience working with SL,
Right.
you know, they come in immediately to do the triage and stuff like that. So, but like you said, for long haul, it's loans, you know, but it's nowhere free money or anything like that. So it takes a long time for individuals and families to come back. So.
And this is an administration that clearly doesn't care about that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd like to believe this is a Congress that does.
Mm-hmm. I hope so. I mean, I think the thinking of politicians and even some of the public is just very short term now. It's no longer long range. They just move on from issue to issue. So.
Look, we've got more.
Okay.
Yeah, everybody, it's now the next election, I think. We're getting up to,
Well, particularly with this
Beginning of the
administration, it's every day, right?
campaign.
Like as you guys have said before, every day it's another
Every
injury.
day's a new party.
So
But you know, I
but
hear you.
but the fundamental things, whether it be Russia and things like that, they're base things that the senator is not wavering from. So
No member of Congress wants to see their district underwater like that. That's just not good for the next election cycle, no
Mhm.
matter how you parse that.
mhm.
So, you know, all the pundits have been quick to talk about how Republicans and Democrats aren't checking their political IDs in the boats as they're rescuing people in Houston. That's true for the moment. But somewhere we've got to focus on a longer term strategy and a cohesive strategy that tries to curtail events like this and then make available what people need when they need it
Mhm.
in events like this. And you know, one of the things Dale was talking about upstairs is it's not just reauthorizing federal flood insurance, it's also looking at those maps. You know, the maps are old and are not reflective of current science.
Mhm.
You know, if any of it, I don't know how many of you here have flood insurance and have looked at your map, but, you know, like, house we owned for a long time, the map said the house across the street from us needed it and we didn't. And we kept wondering if the water would know that difference, you know, that it needed to stop over there. So these are real things we can be working on now. They're not sexy, they're not
Yeah.
headline grabbing, but they're real.
Mhm. And in Hawaii, it's things even like coastal erosion. You're seeing that on the windward side in Punaluu. You're seeing that if you drive, I mean, for Maui residents who have to drive out to Lahaina each and every day, the shore erosion, and yet we're faced with jurisdictional issues, and this isn't even a national issue, this is a local issue. Department of Transportation is saying, well, it's DLNR that has shoreline responsibility, and we're only gonna do emergency response at this point. You know, so you know, and DLNR said, well, we don't have the money to do this, and so we just kind of get
pass
stuck.
in the buck.
Or we just get stuck until it's to the point now. I think Maui is probably based on the usage is having the worst issues. But I know on the windward side in Punaluu, areas Ka'ava, there have been
That was shut down both directions for days
there
not too
have
long
been
ago,
there
right?
have been emergency repairs. So
Like earlier in the year.
yeah.
Jamie lives out there.
Yeah, and it was just on the news again like 2 nights ago that it was
So I
bad
think
again.
when we talked to the Hawaii Department of Transportation, they were saying, and I don't quote me for this number, but I think when they looked at this issue and they're bringing in both the Corps of Engineers and the UH, the number they're looking at is possibly like up to $50 billion to move all the roads, coastal roads, safer. And I don't know if that even takes in to account climate change or just the current status. You know, so on Maui, what they're doing is they have a realignment for a portion of it, but it's the area that's most affected. They have no real plans for it. So
When historians look at us, they're gonna wonder how we
Stick our
managed
head
to
in
F
the
it up
sand.
quite this badly.
well, I think I mean whether it's be local or national or whatever, people just kind of silo themselves because it's easier that way. You go, okay, I work in this silo but then I don't have any control over what this person does. I don't have control over this. As I say, it's the horizontal connections that oftentimes don't happen. So,
Well, and I think I think I can speak for all of us here when I say we think we have a couple of senators who know how to make those horizontal connections. And we think they have the kind of voices that can bring credibility and attention to those connections. And they're in pretty safe seats, pretty safe places. So, yeah. I'm not going to ask you about the governor's race, even though I'm dying to.
You asked me if I'm going to go?
Well, everybody's running for something.
Exactly.
So go for it, dude.
Hal,
We'll go for it.
did you guys talk about the story that was broke by Washington Post and Times about Mike Pence committing impeachable offenses?
Oh, we didn't.
So it was reported that a letter that Mueller uncovered, which was an original memo from Trump that talked about a screed of identifying all these connections to the Russian probe and why he decided to fire Comey. And so Pence was in the room when this was talked about. It was later edited, and then Pence went onto TV saying that it had nothing to do with the Russian probe. So what they're saying is that this implicates him now for aiding and abetting in conspiracy to, or in obstruction of justice, and misprision of a felony, and also conspiracy for obstruction of justice. And so those are all impeachable offenses. And for me, I mean, when you watch the stuff with Joe Arpaio, you know, which there's questions on whether or not that was even a constitutional pardon, because he now has he was found guilty in court, and now there's no recuse for these like families and stuff. There's no legal actions for them to take anymore. And so I think that there needs to be something where we feel that our government people are held accountable. Like there's too much of like blatant like breaking of the law, and like there's no accountability happening. So our MOC is like working on anything to like not only hold Trump but also hold Pence accountable for these actions, and make sure that there needs to be some trust established back between the people and our government.
I'm not aware of that. I mean, but I think the senator said I mean, there is no timeline for Mueller's investigation, but he needs to be allowed to complete what they're doing and all this kind of fact finding and what they present. And then based on that, I think Congress is then going to have to decide what is the next step. So I think she's trying not to comment too much on what Mueller is doing, just so that but just to support the work they're doing and making sure that people like the FBI director and everything are not stepping in. There's no one in a position that can step in to limit the work that Mueller has to do.
Okay.
It's putting a lot of eggs in one basket.
It is.
Your photo.
It's not that I have a suggestion for a solution. It's just that's frightening. It's a lot of eggs in one basket.
In fact, there's, I think, a House bill that was, they were gonna try to limit the length of the investigation or the scope of it,
Yeah.
right? I don't know if whether that's got any chance of going anywhere, but it's pretty scary.
Can we talk about North Korea? Because we haven't talked about anything scary today.
You mean whether it's atomic or hydrogen?
Yeah, let's make sure we get that back straight, because we want to know how to prepare. Mattis's words on, was that Sunday? We don't want to see the total annihilation of a country, namely North Korea. Those are frightening words on the steps of the White House on a Sunday from the Secretary of Defense. Where's the senator on it? What's her view? Do we think sanctions can really work? And what's her focus right now as it relates to North Korea?
I mean, I guess she has more information than I do. Based on what she is obviously monitoring what is happening up here very carefully, not just for the impact on Hawaii, but just globally. What this one individual seems to be driven on a course, and if you're watching the news that's coming out, I mean, it's not trending in a good direction as far as the testing and everything that they're doing. But the question is then, if he has this capability, what is he going to do with it? Is he just going to be like other countries, just sit on it, or is he going to go the next step? And no one knows. I think that is the scariest part. And I think in some respects, what I read is that he's just doing this so he could have a seat at the table. There's a recognition, because I think for the longest time people have just tried to marginalize North Korea through sanctions. But if that is not going to work, is what is it? Is that do you do what someone's saying is that, okay, we acknowledge they have nuclear weapons, to limit just like with other countries, is not to say you don't have it because you can't stop it at that point, but just to kind of limit it and move beyond that. I don't know how. I mean, I think that
Yeah, I
that
bet a lot of
changes.
these policy wonks in the Pentagon and all are digging out all the old books from the Cold War on nuclear crisis management,
Because
game theory,
if that
and all
happens,
that.
that changes the complete
Thomas Schelling
mindset
and
for our government, the
Samuel
State Department
Huntington.
level, and the Pentagon to deal with a country like North Korea. And I mean, in my experience, government is not a very nimble organization. You know, it is a very slow turn. But
I mean, it feels like we're in the 50s. I mean, when you watch the Charlottesville torch march, you know, and then we have the sirens testing for nuclear bombings, and I guess the kids are now going to have to start hiding under the tables, is what we're doing here in Hawaii. Like, it just, I never lived through the 50s, but this feels like probably what was going on in the 50s here, you know?
Mhm.
So, I think for us in Hawaii, like, we need to know that our MOCs are being proactive on this.
Yeah, I guess I think the same thing. I think the Senate has I never see a real, even if it's unsuccessful, a coordinated effort to reinstitute the rule that there needs to be a declaration of war before there's a unilateral attack on another nation. I don't see any coordinated effort to insist on diplomacy or sanctions or whole range of non-military options. I don't know. Is there leadership? Is there somebody that's doing that, or there?
I mean, really, it's the executive branch. I mean, that
Doesn't
has
need to be.
no, but has the responsibility for that. But like I said,
policy, yeah.
the one thing I know I have to get back to this group on is the question that came up previously, but we've had staff traveling and stuff, is the authorized use of military force. Is where does the senator, what's the senator's position on this? Is I need to find that out for you.
Yes.
And
And it
If he
becomes,
seeks authorization, which they may not.
Well, under the current legislation is, and that's what they said, is based on what was passed previously. It's kind of very open-ended. So,
but certainly a preemptive strike is not authorized in the Constitution. Now, again, we've had many presidents who've invented provocation so they can make a strike.
yeah.
But
But we can't get ahead of South Korea.
exactly, and it seems
They're-
unclear whether the administration is threatening, their language is sloppy, whether it's preemptive or annihilation and reaction. And again, unfortunately, it's been the policy of the United States for annihilation after first strike.
Yeah.
But again, it's very important
Mhm.
that the Senate clarifies their position in terms of preemptive strikes.
Okay.
And it relates to certainly Syria, but it also now relates to Korea and other places where there in fact may be provocations.
Anything else from anybody else?
I just want to say thank you again to the Senator for her press conference and with the Attorney General. I really appreciated her speaking out like she did on Wednesday.
Well, I think, I mean, she's not a lone voice. I mean, like, as
No.
was demonstrated there is, I mean, I think Hawaii, thankfully, is different than other places.
Yes.
Is I mean, and we're not all in agreement. You know, there are we have issues just like other places do. But I think there's a genuine people here are genuine, and people here do care about each other.
Yes.
So we're not to the point of other places where you just become a nameless, faceless. And I'm not knocking New York or Los Angeles, but there's so many people in those places that you just lose track of it. And we've talked about it here, you know, like I said, and I give you guys credit for coming here since January. You know, before January, you guys didn't know who I was except
Right.
for a nameless, faceless person, and I didn't know who you guys were for a nameless, faceless person.
And look how much better off we are now.
Oh, no.
Things are getting worse.
So,
To that point, we will be marching this afternoon out front.
Okay.
Sign waving 4:30 to
DACA.
6 over DACA. Yeah.
okay.
Oh, I guess I should bring up, since there's the stuff about DACA. Tatiana brought it up, and I want to say the Senate bill is 85, but I'm not positive. I'll get it from her. But there's one that is talking about protective spaces, so like courts and other places for immigrants that ICE cannot come and go and detain these people. So we'd like to see Mazie on board with that one, but I'll get the number for you and send it to you.
And then, just the senator actually did meet. Again, I don't know if I should. What I'm allowed to say, or what I'm not allowed to say. But one of the individuals that's going to come before the Senate Judiciary Committee this week is that gentleman Van, who is going to be within the Department of Justice Civil Rights. So the senator did have an opportunity to meet with him. He, from his resume, he does not have a depth of experience on the issues. So I think when it comes to the matter of the public record, that is something we also reached out to. I think we shared with you the document, but the Hawaii Coalition on Civil Rights is, or for civil rights, I should say, is if there's specific issues in this state that need to be raised, we have the opportunity to get him on record.
Awesome.
Good.
So
Awesome.
Good.
And tell Mazie thank you for her video. It was awesome.
Yeah.
which video?
The
The
one
one
that
from
she
this
did.
morning.
The one from this
The one
morning
from
that
this
she did
Oh,
this
see
morning.
again, social media. You can't. You get. I
Oh.
hear from you
It
guys.
was fantastic.
It was fantastic. Yeah.
One other thing real quickly, ICE has now asked NARA, the National Archives
Record.
Yeah.
record
Yeah.
something or other,
Administration.
to start basically shredding all of their documents on immigrants. Yeah, I'll send it over to you. Dale didn't know about it either. We heard about it from the ACLU. It's worth looking into,
Yeah.
particularly as it relates to cases of abuse, mistreatment, incarceration, all those things that we would want to have
Yeah.
sunshine on. They're
Yeah.
asking that they obliterate them.
Okay.
I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Thanks, Alan.